Today we are learning basketball with Thom. That's at Thom, not Tom on Twitter. Big fan of all things basketball in Michigan and Detroit. We're going to hit on the program. We're going to hit on the playoff bound Pistons, a little bit of scouting philosophy, a lot of Danny Wolf coming up soon, the big conversation. Can't wait to dive into that one. And, maybe a little NBA fun award races to end it. But, before we dive in, how are you doing today, Thom?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day in West Michigan right now, and I'm ready to talk some hoops.
You already know. It's great to hear. It's a beautiful day here in Florida too. Look how funny how that works sometimes. So, before we hit on some of the specific teams, I'd love to hear a little bit about your process, your philosophy. Say when you're scouting a player and you see something you like that you think maybe he could be a future pro one day. Is there any specifics you're looking for in your scouting process, whether it's a specific trade or an overall archetype or anything really that helps kind of convince you these skills are going to translate to the next level?
I'm usually coming at it from like a fan-oriented perspective. So a lot of the time it's like, how do they slot in for the team that I root for? What am I looking for in that regard? I do have a broader just sort of lens for people that aren't necessarily going to the Pistons or going to Michigan. But I think as far as types that I have, it's funny that we're going to be talking about Danny Wolf. I do really like guys that can handle and pass above their size. So you would think he would be like 100% up my alley. I love point forwards. I like rangy defensive guys. I generally try and keep an eye on, I'm a big sports reference guy. So it's like, what's their BPM look like from year to year? If they're not a one and done, did they have a big second year jump? What's their steal percentage looking like? Is this somebody that's got the athleticism that's going to translate to the next level? Or is this somebody that, can play like a star against lower competition, but once, things heat up and the athletes get a little bit better, maybe they're neutralized at the next level. I think this is a pretty general concern, but I'm a little leery of older prospects. If you get into the 23, 24 range, you really got to be crushing it. I wasn't a big Keegan Murray guy. I thought he would be solid, which is he has been, but it just seemed like he kind of had already probably hit about 80% of what he was going to be by the time he was done at Iowa. And he's been fine for the Kings, but again, that was another one where it was like him or Jaden Ivey. I wasn't feeling great about that the first couple of years. I'm feeling a little better about it now because I think Ivey's still got a long way that he can go. I will say, though, I was a big AJ Griffin guy that year. Different reasons that didn't quite work out. So,
yeah, man, talk about a lot of talent and all those names, and don't have to dive too much into AJ. Yeah, but he was
no shade on AJ Griffin. He was a fun prospect.
Yeah, it really stinks to see what happened to him. He was I'm right there with you. He was one of the most exciting, especially shooters that we saw come up through the draft. So it is sad to see his story, what he's been going through. But I see you, and that I think that older prospect kind of taboo has changed a lot over the last few years, where a combination of things where I think a lot of what you said is true, and maybe some of the older prospects are perhaps closer to their finished product, but just because they're lacking that potential doesn't mean they don't provide value in the draft, where I think a lot of over the history of the league, the draft has been used to find potential stars. And more so these last few years, it's kind of broadened a little bit to also just be, let's target good basketball players if we're not going to find that potential star. And, maybe, even Ivey and Keegan Murray, in my head, I would think Ivey had that potential. He had that first step explosiveness as a guard that really gave him high potential in that class. And maybe Keegan Murray was a little more plug and play, ready to go. And he turned out to be, if we just put him in a very specific role where he's hitting catch and shoot threes, he's going to lead the league at 3-point percentage because he's overqualified at that role. So that's one of those things where I do think, you can find high impact guys that way, where you reduce the role. You're not asking them to be a star. You're just asking them to slide in, play good basketball, defend, hold their own, move the ball, and hit open shots. And, it turned out Keegan Murray prime for that role. So it's interesting where that line is for teams. I think it's different for every draft and the situation of teams. Like if you already have stars in place, maybe you're after more good basketball players versus if you just have, dystopia, open court, like there's nothing going on in this gym, like just open desert looking for talent, starving for it, drowning for it, then you take a swing on a guy that you think might be a potential star. And I think where we get bogged down sometimes is that word potential can mean a whole lot of things to different people. It can be totally made up based on he has the length, and I've seen him. It looks clean when he shoots the jumper, versus actually, and maybe he'll put it all together, those tools, versus actually showing it consistently and thinking that, the potential is how it scales up or down. So it's super interesting to kind of dive into some of that potential. And that leads me to some of these fun prospects in this class. We'll hit on Danny Wolf in a moment here, but I'd also like to hear about some of your thoughts on Ace Bailey. He's another polarizing prospect in the draft this year. Started off really high, like third and on most mock drafts, if not second, and probably has seen his stock take a little bit of a dive since then, but you're still seeing him as high as third, fourth, fifth. Like it probably would be more surprising for him not to go in the top five, even with something of a down year at Rutgers, where I think he showed the tools that really make him an exciting, polarizing prospect, but then he's also showed some of the flaws that have people worried as a primary number one guy. So I was wondering, what were your thoughts on Ace as a prospect this year?
I think Ace is kind of fascinating because I think people see exactly what they want to see with him. If you love him, like, you don't see any of the flaws. If you don't like him, it's all you see. And I had a good opportunity. Rutgers played Michigan a couple times this year, so with a vested interest watching him, it's like, he is a dangerous scorer. He's a guy that you have to give a lot of attention to. He's a guy that can hurt you in a lot of different ways. But he's a guy that can implode on himself at times. He's a guy that I will say, I'll give him credit. I'm not a big Ace guy. It's not an archetype that I'm super into. I wasn't a big Jabari Smith guy. I wasn't a big Brandon Miller guy. I think anytime people are getting compared to Paul George or Kevin Durant, I immediately get skeptical of them as a prospect. Because, like, when is it? I mean, it hasn't worked out. Like, I think Brandon Miller's pretty good, and Bari's gotten better as his career's gone along. But I wouldn't say that Bari especially has hit what people kind of thought he could be as a prospect. But Ace definitely improved his shot selection across the season. Like, it went from me being like, I don't know how you take this guy in the top 10 to, like, in this class where beyond Flag and beyond Harper, I think it really is about what you like after those guys. And it's like a season to taste kind of situation. It's like, I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on him at 4 or 5, even as like kind of an Ace Bailey hater. It's like, if it works out, I think it could work out really well. It's just, I think he's a guy that's got a lower floor than a lot of the guys that you could potentially be taking in the lottery.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it, because I think I really like the comparison to Jabari Smith, mostly because of the pre-draft talks, not exactly because of the comp, but just the way we kind of all the consensus, the media, the fans look at them when they are in that pre-draft talks, where he's now mentioned among top 3. Like should he go number 1 in the top 3 conversation? That means we're now judging him from essentially a superstar level expectation, where if he's going to be a top 3 pick with other potential top 3 picks like Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, where we view them as potential franchise cornerstones, that's the bar. So if you draft a guy and he doesn't become that, now you're sitting there disappointed. Your fans are upset that you took the wrong guy and all this stuff. But when you flip it and just say, we just like what we see in the basketball player, like he defends well, he shoots threes, and he can hit tough shots. Now in the mid range, in the post, in the pull up, but he might have trouble creating those shots with the handle being a little not as tight as you'd like it to be, where maybe he's not creating those advantages as easily against ace defenders all up under him when he's trying to dribble. And maybe he's just kind of better suited for something of a D&3 role with a tough shot making tenacity, a little bit of upside there. So that's where I think expectations come into play for specifically for Ace Bailey, where like you said, after those top 2, it's really, I honestly think you can talk yourself into a whole mess of guys, which is probably why we're about to talk about Danny Wolf and how high I'm still, I have him at 3, which we'll get to in a second. Like that's just kind of the exact mindset where I'm just all in on some of the upside notions that I see. So with Ace, I kind of see what you're saying with the same thing, where like personally, I would have him in that next tier down. Like I think you could go like 10 picks and find good talent. I think you could make the case for a top 20 at that 3 spot because of how many good prospects there are. It's very deep of talent, but no one's jumping out as a clear star at the third or fourth or fifth pick, like a Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper seem to be a little bit more of. So I think the expectations play a big part in kind of how we look at these guys and how we judge them, when we could probably just appreciate them for doing what they do really well and not be so, harsh on some of the smaller things and getting lost in the comparisons. But I'm kind of with you in that Ace Bailey clearly shows the talent that NBA draft evaluators want to see. They see a big wing defender, an athletic freak that can make big time plays on the defensive end, push the pace, get downhill on a fast break, and throw down a monster slam. Can hit those tough shot fadeaways. He is the what's the word? The franchise player that you think of in your head, that's what he looks like the big wing that's going to hit tough shots and help me sell tickets. So I get it. And he can shoot threes. You got D&3 impact. You have the tough shot maker impact. Those skills alone are worth drafting for the upside as well. But as kind of we're hitting on, if he can't create all those shots off the dribble himself, then it's really hard to give him the touches of a primary scoring option where he's expected to create for himself, create for others, and he doesn't really do those two specific things at an elite level the way he does defend and shoot and hit the tough shot when he has the advantage already created for him with the mismatch. So I think those are where we end up a little lower. I want to say I have him about 12th, but I'd have to double check that. Right in the range with like Trey Johnson and kind of right after the bigs. So I'm really high on the bigs in this draft. I think that the bigs ultimately will be how we remember this draft. If you want to count Cooper Flagg in the front court is kind of what I'm getting at, the front court of this draft, because there's let me pull up a big board here, but there's just a lot of interesting talents that are big men. You got Danny Wolf, polarizing offensive scoring creator type that has also, shown some things defensively. And we'll dive into him in a second. But Noah Asang is something of a defensive stalwart overseas who could be a downhill front court two-way force is his potential. VJ's more of a guard, but, he's plays athletically crazy. He's bouncing off walls. Asa Newell, Colin Murray Boyles, Kaman Maluak, Derek Queen, and even Ace and Miles Bird are also wings. But like those bigs really stand out to me. I think that will be the group of players we remember this draft most for, just because of how talented they are, and a lot of them bring real two-way impact. So that's where I end up in the next tier. Other than VJ Edgecombe, it's all bigs for me from 3 to 9, because of how talented I feel that this class of bigs are. So, before I dive into all the reasons I'm high on Danny Wolf, do you have any thoughts on kind of the bigs in this class and maybe how your big board looks in that range?
It's just a lot of question marks, I think, across the board. And I think that there are bigs that have more interesting or less concerning question marks. Like Maluak, I know what that guy is going to be. Like I would take him. I think I probably have him and Queen up in the 4 to 5 range, just because it's like, I'm not worried about what they're actually going to do. Queen, you might have some athleticism or size concerns, but I know that guy's got touch around the rim. He's got some interesting, secondary creation potential. Like he's a skilled guy. I'm willing to bet on that in his demeanor. Maluak, it's like, you're getting a big that can, efficiently get you 10 to 14 points, protect the rim. And it's a guy with maybe a little hidden upside just because he hasn't been playing basketball very much. But, it's like, I think this is a year where it's like an eye of the beholder draft. I don't begrudge anybody shifting the board around past those first 2 guys, because everybody's got concerns. Like everybody's got stuff to nitpick. And if you see something, I'm going to be on the anti side of the Danny Wolf conversation that we have, but I don't blame you for seeing stuff in him. I mean, if you're going to take a swing on a guy, I feel like this is the draft to do it, because there's not like a sure star prospect outside of, depending on how you feel about Harper. I like him a lot, but I think Flagg is the sure thing. Harper's the next surest thing. And then I think it's kind of a muddle in the middle after that. So if you see something, I think, why not take your shot?
Exactly. I mean, that's what we're getting at here with, especially just the talent in general, where, like you say, I have the beholder. I think there are guards that I have in the 20s or at least low teens that someone else probably has in their top five, and they're very talented guards. I'd say for me, that's probably something I stay away from is undersized guards that if they can't defend and shoot at a high rate, it's really hard to get them on the court. And they got to be pretty special at one or the other if they're giving up the other one. And doesn't mean every player has to be a D&3 guy. It's more so it's just a lot easier to see the court if you are at least that, and also make good decisions with the ball, team first type of ball movement. So there's just a lot of different ways here. Like, I've seen guys like Concanipple, Kasparis Yakachonis, Jeremiah Fears. I'm a little lower on them, just outside the lottery, but like a lot of people see star potential. Someone sees what they want to see in the right player, and they, like you said, they go all in on that draft pick, and all it takes is one team to really target and prioritize a skill set that a player has to bring them in and make it happen. So that's why we make these general big boards and try to divvy them up into tiers where we think, this is how I rank it overall. But, 5 different teams might reorder this whole list, even if it's in that same tier. But maybe they don't need, a playmaking point center to take a dice roll on. Maybe they want the more of the two-way play finisher wing, like you said with Maluak. I think he has a very straightforward game that will translate as an effective rim roller, super efficient play finisher at the rim, defensive hands, active hands, big body, roll threat, lob threat, like clearly can be a play finisher, defensive anchor type in his ideal situation. And you can kind of play that in any lineup. Every team needs an anchor that does those things, even if, you might have to balance it with floor balance elsewhere. But, and I also view Asa Newell as having a very high floor. That's why I'm super high on him. He was the guy I had third pretty much all season because of everything we're talking about, where the clear star upside isn't there, but that clear role player, like high floor, is there to me with a guy like him, where if you think he's going to be a versatile, strong defender that is one of the best offensive rebounders in the class, like has that the second jump and the reach, the standing reach, and kind of that tall point, that those are kind of his elite traits that separate him. And then also some baseline athleticism, can hit the open three, has some post move counter moves when he attacks closeouts, and yeah, has flaws like every prospect, but I think he does the things you want in a role player really well that will translate. So I'm pretty high on him compared to other guys that might have a little higher star upside, but a little more unknown scalability with their role if it goes down. So let's just dive in here. The Danny Wolf conversation.
It's time. The world can wait no longer.
It's what everyone is here to listen to. I mean, people are dying for what we're going to hear. So spoiler alert, I have Danny Wolf number 3 on my big board as of today. I have for a few months now, ever since I kind of dove into his tape. We'll see if I can pull up a video here while we're talking, which just shows off some of his skill. But what boils down to me is every time I go to these big boards to try to like really hammer out who I'm highest on with the star upside, I keep coming back to, I guess, his feel for the game. And some people will have told me it's actually like his decision making is actually a negative at times. And it's true, he has high turnovers and he's very risk happy, like very happy to take a risk. But when I throw Danny Wolf game on, I see a guy basically be a one-man scoring creator, a one-man offensive engine for his team, where I'll see him create good looks, a good shot for his team, initiate offense as a 7-point center running pick and roll, which I've never really seen before. So that's probably the wow factor that brings in like, oh, that's new, that's different. Can it be sustainable at the next level? And, if we didn't have Alperen Sengun in Houston and Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento, Vucevic having his level of success in Orlando and Chicago, and then obviously the one outlier here, Nikola Jokic, did win it all as this player type. So while have kind of been, there's examples of guys that see regular season success and then one example of the ultimate success, the postseason success with something of this player type, where you can judge the athleticism for what it is. It's not traditional athleticism, high flying dunks, but surprising to me, his mobility is really impressive. Like he's a grab and go guy that can grab the rebound, push the pace, fly down the floor with a live dribble, and then make a quick decision on the fly where he's just hitting a no look pass or a dump off to somebody else in transition. So I'd say what it boils down to is betting on his feel, and then he also has, this is more so flashes, but the tough shot making comes in flashes where he'll throw in a step back three all of a sudden in a live dribble, or a post up fadeaway, or a nice touch finish at the rim. Obviously, he has that pick and roll lob threat down with the big man. Like, that's the proof of concept to me, where he's able to run pick and rolls, 4 or 5 pick and rolls, and it's a very effective play every time down, with his teammate. Now I'm blanking on his name.
We're talking about Vlad Golden.
Vlad Golden. I can remember the Vladislav was his full first name, but Golden. Golden's I'm high on Golden too. I think he can be an effective rim roller, kind of defensive anchor type later in the draft, but that kind of shows, like, at the very least, a proof of concept. We have a 4-5 pick and roll. He has good touch indicators. Well, some, I should say. Some are also bad touch indicators. So that's kind of where the polarizing gets into. And we can hit on some of the stats in a second. But what are some of your initial thoughts on maybe, some of the pros that you could see the upside with Wolf, but also some immediate concerns? Because you're over here watching every Michigan game. You're bleeding blue, So we got to know from firsthand, what's it been like, the full Danny Wolf experience?
So the fact that we're past the tournament now and everything, there's no outcome is in question. I know I can look back clearly on what happened. When Michigan fans were in the trenches this season, like, they won 27 games. They managed to string together a Sweet 16 team coming off of 9 wins. It is as good an outcome as you could possibly expect. It was so frustrating to watch on a game-to-game basis. And I think that it's hard to really describe it if you don't have a vested interest, because I think and I think it's good to have an objective view on guys that you're watching, where you can just watch what they're doing and you can separate it from, like, what do I need you to do right now? I need you to stop the bleeding. I need you to not do a weird spin move at half court for no reason and drop the ball out of bounds. Like, it's great that you can do that, dude, but please, that is not the time for that right now. So I think Wolf was a great player. I absolutely agree with everything that you said about him. And I think that is the sort of beauty and frustration of this Michigan team, is there was so much talent on display. They were so unique. The 4-5 pick and roll was so unique, playing 2 7-footers. I really didn't think it could work, and the way that it did work was incredible. And Wolf was in a role that he had never been in before. Like, he was not playing that way at Yale. I think Dusty May really saw something in him and decided he was going to take a big swing with how they were going to center their offense around him. And I think that it largely paid off. I mean, the results do speak for themselves. They gave Auburn everything they could handle for probably 28 minutes of that game against the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Like, if you had told me before the season that's how it was going to work out, I would have said you were crazy. So, like, it really did work out perfectly, but it's the granular. There's a quote. I do not feel this way about him, but there's a quote from Hunter S. Thompson about Richard Nixon where he says basically, like, it's like, he looks great on paper. It's you need to really, like, objectivity doesn't work with him, because you need to get subjective to see all the ways that he can really hurt you and the rot underneath. But I don't really feel that way about Danny, but they're just on. Michigan had a theme this season where they would rush out in the first half and they would look like $1 million, and then the game would slow down in the second half and they would just slowly bleed out. And they won most of those games, but it's the least satisfying kind of win that you can watch as a fan, because it's just like, you are stressed out for the last 15 minutes of the game. And every single game, it was like, I'm never watching them again. I'm never watching them again. Like, but yeah, I mean, even in, like, the Auburn game, or when he was playing against UC San Diego, you have these high leverage situations where he just dribbles the ball off the back of his leg. Like, he has an out of control sequence where he's trying to do too much and he's trying to run full court, which he's capable of doing. Like, he does kind of feel like a baby bird that's stretching its wings for the first time, or like you see like a younger like fawn running around and it doesn't have its legs under it the whole time. Like he's still trying out a lot of newer stuff. And the thing I will say with him is I think his offensive skill set is definitely the intriguing thing at the next level. But I mean, I believe in him as a first round pick. Absolutely. I think if you take him, I would say probably even late lottery if you take him. Like, I get it. But the thing that makes me a little more confident in him is with his movement isn't just on the offensive end. He was able to hang with fours on the perimeter. Like I think the concern I have more with him is I don't know whether he's a 4 or a 5 at the next level. Because I think his rim protection is pretty solid and he's a pretty solid defensive rebounder, but he was not playing full-time center for them. And then he was pretty good at hanging, like he guarded John Tonji really well against Wisconsin. Like there are guys on the perimeter that were not just blowing by him, but I don't know whether he's going to be able to continue that at the next level. And so, I mean, I think if there is a team that sees that skill set and they think they can fit him, or maybe you want to structure more of your offense around what he does, but I do worry a little bit that the superstar upside of like a 7-foot shooting guard basically is like, how many teams are you going to get the most out of it if you're not structuring your whole offense around it? And I think that is where I have larger concerns with him, but I think I'm in a little more agreeable mood now that the season is over, because if you had said this to me after some of the Michigan State games or after some of the Big Ten tournament games, even they won those games, I would have been like, I'm done with him. I can't watch him anymore. I'm sick of this. It's like the turnovers are out of control. But yeah, I mean, like I can't deny he's an intriguing prospect. Like there's so much happening there. There's too much happening there if you're trying to root for him on your team almost. But he's a fascinating set of contradictions.
Yeah, I can see how the rooting interest is a big factor here. Where you're a fan of a player, that can be a little frustrating. Is a lot more in the moment reactions to somebody like that, where there's no excuse for some of those turnovers. Like they were full display, even in March Madness, where a ball might get dribbled off a foot or a pass that just wasn't there was made, and there's no excuse for those. You would hope that those are things that he learns from and can kind of develop better decision making. But that might be something you can note on as well, was if you notice anything over his development from the time he got there to the end, because we're talking about a pretty big seismic shift between like a player that was at Yale to D1 Michigan to potential first round pick in like a 2-year span, where he might have not been thinking about this at all. So sometimes I wonder like where his mindset is, if he even knows how good he is at certain things, and how much more consistent maybe he could be because he's good at certain things. Maybe don't try the risky, crazy dribbles or things when you're trying to also get evaluated as a pro and win games. So I can definitely see, I personally think turnovers, I'm not as worried at this stage, but obviously they are not good. Like there's something I think can, like, I believe can get fine tuned out of a decision maker's game if he's willing to learn and obviously understands that game and understands why they were mistakes, and then hopefully with the ball can kind of, with reps, fine tune those where he's not just making silly mistakes like that, needless turnovers. And one thing I really do agree as a concern is the scalability factor. Like I'm not sure this is a player a lot of teams would just build a bench offense around or something like that. Like he is a guy where to unlock him as a hub, essentially an offensive hub, he has to be played through, where that offensive feel, the playmaking, the decision making, the finishing touch, like you almost have to let him try to create advantages for the team to get the most out of his skill set. So I do agree that if a team already has an offense in place and is just looking for good winning basketball players to build out a rotation, there's probably other players here that are better suited to fill a multitude of different roles once you already have the star in place. So I would say I'm also with you that like it feels like a good late lottery pick where we've gotten through all the big names. It's right in that range where Giannis was taken as well, where it's a little bit more of an unknown once you hit about 15, 16, 17, 18, where no one's going to judge you for making a mistake. And the teams that really need a big swing probably should take a big swing there, because a lot of teams are unlikely to get those star level talents anywhere other than the draft. So that's another thing that comes into play as well. But yeah, I'm glad you hit on his footwork as well. I think he shows good footwork and defensive fundamentals like that would surprise you given the athleticism. I don't think many people would guess he might be able to switch onto fours and hold his own on the perimeter a little bit. That's a big plus for that position problem, as you alluded to. Like, is he a five? Is he a four? I think offensively he's a creator hub that is more traditionally found at the five, and defensively he's probably just gets thrown at the five and tries to get covered up. Is kind of how I would foresee it happening. Almost like a Sengun maybe is probably the closest player comp that comes to mind for some of that. But it's about if you're going all in on a guy like that, you pretty much have to try to balance the floor with defensive versatility and the right type of guys to play around him. So that's a great point, that any team that does go all in on him with a high draft pick better be ready to actually build around him and build through him, and give him a little bit of a runway to see how the offense looks through him, because I think he can hold his own defensively out there, and he can make good decisions with the ball. He can shoot a little bit, he can dribble and pass a little bit, and he's just such a unique feel for the game between the timing and touch that's that special skill that is just winning me over the special skills of all the other prospects. Where, take Derek Queen, for example. I think he's another guy that's kind of high risk, high reward as well, where a little bit of positionless as well. The defense is a little bit unknown, but he has a clear level of strength, athleticism, graceful footwork, the tight handle on drives where no one's really getting in front of him on drives. Like, it's almost like watching Zion. Like, he just gets to the rim at will and no one's getting in his way because there's a tank coming through and you don't want to be any part of that. So like the comparison there is, when I was looking at numbers earlier, I'm not sure if this is still true, but they were actually very similar on some numbers that surprised me a little bit. Like, their ability to drive to the paint. They were both, last time I checked, I have to see if this is still true, but they were both very similar at drawing fouls on drives. And that surprised me a little bit, because I would have thought that Queen would just run away drawing fouls on those drives because of his downhill athleticism there. And there's some touch indicators I can hit on for Wolf as well. So I would say the bad touch indicator is the free throw percentage. Normally, you want to see a high free throw percentage, which can be an indicator for future 3-point shooting development. He does not have that. He's at 60% on free throws for the year. That's bad. That's just a bad indicator. There's no excuse for it. I would say that there are multiple touch indicators that we can also use. So just for the record, he has shown he can already shoot on and off the ball, at least at Michigan. 34% on catch and shoot attempts, 60 of them, and 33% on 50 off the dribble attempts. So almost the exact same percentage, whether he's on or off the ball, hitting threes, including some really tough shots. Like, he'll pull up for a step back three out of nowhere because he can. And that's the kind of stuff where it's like, does he even know how good he is at some of that stuff? Like, I want to see, like, instead of just a flash here and there in the pan, I want to see all of this put together, like you say, with fewer turnovers, where he knows he can create a good look every time. Let's just see him do it instead of just trying to, I don't know, maybe force it a little too much. So that's where the concerns are with there. And he's also 60%. Did I get that right? 60% at the rim as well. So, a positive indicator there around the rim. Maybe might be a little average or below average compared to all big men, but it's not like bad or anything near the rim. So shout out to some of those touch indicators. And the other one that I thought was interesting was he's one of the most efficient pick and roll ball handlers in the league, like in the whole D1 of basketball, like including guards. He had 230 pick and rolls this year, where he was the point guard at point center, and he created 0.94 points per possession, including passes, which is a very good rating on very high volume. So he's shown he can run a pro play type as the ball handler. He can see the court. I forgot to pull up the video. Let's see if I can get it here while we're talking. But man, he's at the very least just incredible. Also, one fun stat from evanmaya.com: Michigan's on-off splits. Their offense was plus 4 points per possession better with Danny Wolf on the floor, but it's their defense was plus 18 points per possession better with Danny Wolf on the floor. So that's one where you might be pretty surprised, at least some critics, that the defense is not as big of a worry as some might think. It's really it's kind of funny that I think his feel for the game is the greatest strength. And then also the decision making, which can be part of that feel, can be his biggest weakness. And it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around that when they both kind of viewed as the same thing. But part of me thinks that it's kind of the high volume all at once, throwing a point center into the mix when he's not really that player before. You run a lot of plays through him, and he's generally very efficient. But because of that high volume and the lack of control and maybe maturity at that point, at that stage, just learning the game, the understanding of the game, maybe at that point you get a lot of turnovers. And maybe if he did this for a few seasons, maybe those turnovers come down and the efficiency rises a little bit. So I think that's the bet you're making on the turnovers being fixed long term, is that with reps and time and the decision making get better. So that is one question. Was, did you notice any development from the day he arrived to the last game in terms of his mindset or the way he plays, or was it mostly the same from game one through the last game? And beyond just that, what are your thoughts on Dusty May as the coach in Michigan now, and kind of changing the whole culture at that program?
I mean, I love Dusty personally. Like, it's fun to watch him in interviews because he seems like they have to cut him off. It's like he could go for 4 hours and somebody has to come grab him and be like, hey, you don't have time for this, or like, hey, we have to move on to something else. Like, that guy, everything I've heard about him is he just is a sponge when it comes to basketball stuff. I know when he was at FAU, he was scouting EuroLeague teams to try and get ideas for sets and stuff like that. Like, you might listen to your podcast. I don't know. Apparently he listens to every basketball podcast. So Dusty, if you're listening, big fan. But
hey, come on, learning basketball, Dusty.
Yeah, but I'm sure he would love to talk to you. But but I do kind of wonder with him. Like, I think it was a big move to put that much on Danny Wolf's plate to start. But I do kind of wonder, because you mentioned that, and I definitely agree with the statistics for Wolf's pick and roll play. Like, he always looked more in control doing that than, like, I feel like most of his turnovers were dribbling around the baseline. The one thing in particular that he would have issues with is trying to throw cross-court passes, and it would be too hot for the guy he was throwing it to. Or I kind of wonder with Dusty's system how many anticipation passes he was making, because he would really confidently throw a pass and a guy just wouldn't be there. And you wonder, was that guy not in the right spot? Like, it's entirely possible that's the case. You see that in the NFL sometimes, where a quarterback will throw what looks like an egregious interception, and it's like, well, the guy, it was the wrong route or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Or they didn't realize it was zone or something. But I definitely think I would trust Dusty to put any roster together after this season, honestly. I think that guy is a great leader. I think he's really smart. And I think that he knows how to utilize his personnel. And I think they got about as far as they could have with the personnel they had. And I think you can see already the work that he's done recruiting into the portal. It's like, guys like him, guys want to play for him, and he's an ambitious guy, I think. I mean, you sometimes wonder with mid-major coaches, it's like, do they just want to develop their own guys? And are they, can they only run one system? And like, he has hit the ground running at Michigan, and I don't think he's going to be satisfied with anything other than being like a top 5 to 10 team every single year. But as to your question about Wolf and his development over the course of the season, I think one of the more concerning things for me with him is that if you look at his conference statistics versus his out-of-conference statistics, they're almost identical. Like, looking at this right now, he shot slightly better from 3 during Big Ten play, but it's like 14 points, 9.5 rebounds, 3 assists and change, between 1 and 2 blocks, and then it's like just slightly under 50% field goal percentage, low to mid 30s 3-point, same. It looks like he drew a few more fouls, it looks like, in Big Ten play. But I think that was one of the things that was frustrating is earlier in the season when he was turning the ball over, it's like, new group of guys. They don't fully understand the system yet. He's adjusting to a new role. It's going to get better as the season goes along. And then they just made the same mistakes, like every single time. And it was a variance thing where it was like, well, maybe they'll hit their threes this night. Maybe this will be a better low turnover night. But 2 out of 3 things, the wheels would fall off, it felt like, and it would fall off for a bunch of possessions at the same time.
So a little Danny Wolf mix here, threw together pretty much his best passes, I think, that kind of encompass some of his feel for most of the season. Like a couple of skip passes here that really just super clean. And, someone made a good note that how much of this is his feel, his processing, which I think is very high, and how much of it might be some of his advantages, being a 7-foot point center, playing college basketball, having physical advantage. He can see over the whole defense. How much of this is, him just seeing the open guy in the corner and just flicking it over, and how much is his actually kind of creating that shot because of what his ability to kind of create the advantages, draw in defenders, and then hit the open man. So one of his favorites is right here, the 4-5 pick and roll, hit Golden on the lob, the roll. I mean, that's the one. Like, this look is just easy money. Like, it seems like almost unguardable because of the mismatches it creates, the size advantage with him at point creating it, and then watch this grab and go mobility here, just on the run, little live stiff. Man, he's a fun player. So, that's something I'll ask you. How much do you think his playmaking success is due to some of his physical advantages at this level?
I mean, I think it definitely has something to do with it. Like, the cross-court passes is a good example of that. Like, if you can see over the defense, you're going to see guys in the corner a lot easier. But I don't know. I mean, like, you look at the...
That's nice.
It's nice seeing the highlight reel. Man,
that's nice.
That 4-5 pick and roll goes down so smooth every time. And they understandably, they would crater when both those guys were off the court. They just couldn't. Like, those were the 2 best players on the team, no question. But as much as I loved Trey, but... you look at the variety of the kinds of passes that he throws, and I think he just does have a really high level feel for the game. It's like there's been a couple of them so far in this reel, but one of my favorite parts of his game was the little drop off passes where he gets all the way to the rim and he would drop it off for guards. He would do it for Golden all the time, and that's such to be able to decelerate like that and to not get locked in on going to the basket and to be aware of everybody around you. I mean, I think it's probably harder closer to the basket when you're that tall to be able to tell what's going on underneath you, basically. Like, he would drop off passes to 6-foot guards. So I do think that his court feel and his vision, I think, are definitely one of his biggest strengths. And being 7 foot tall certainly doesn't hurt. Like, I think it's an added bonus. I don't think that it's the cause of his passing ability.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that handle too, like being able to like keep the dribble alive at his speed and like understand not to pick it up. And then there's some of the dump off passes in there.
Love it.
Talking about just like he draws to the rim, somebody's wide open underneath, give it to him. And you can only say so much nice stuff. Like he's just really an incredible feel. I love the handles. I love the feel. I love the playmaking creation, the pick and roll especially. And, obviously these are the highlights. I don't have a low light video ready of him dribbling off his shoe or throwing it to the third stand off a one-hand skip pass that has nothing to do with the offense. Like, he has some of those too. But this is, at the very least, a player I've never seen before. Not really anyone like him. Like, the only one that comes close is the guy that shall not be named, because you're not allowed to like compare a guy to a 2-time MVP or put anything like that on his shoulders. And you don't want to put unfair expectations on, but I just don't know too many 7-footers that can dribble like that and pick up and like and make the right play. Like, so, viewing him as a tall guard is an interesting way to put it. Like, I think he very much excels as a point center. Like, that's how you get the most out of him is just unlocking him, unleashing him. as the point guard of your offense, even if he's playing center. And so, like we've kind of said before, like it's a risky pick. Like there are some clear flaws, clear holes that the consistency might not be there all the time, and the decision making is not pristine top to bottom, and the turnovers can be a little loose and a little heavy. The free throw percentage is not it. That was beautiful though.
Yeah, you look at that and it's like, come on, man.
It's like who cares about free throw percentage? You see that pass?
Your brain really does edit out bad memories, because I'm just like, why was I down on him? Like, man, he looks great.
No, exactly. I mean, the highlights. Funny enough, this is the 2-minute version for Twitter. I can't find the 10-minute version that I had in my, the director's cut, RK's director's cut of the Danny Wolf highlight video. I had it ready, but my computer has deleted it forever. So man, Danny Wolf, polarizing talent, just so much to love with his game. I'm still really high on him. I can't lie, but I definitely have to consider the risk, and I think at the end of the day, that's kind of where the draft comes to, is like, if you aren't looking for a risk, if you want to draft a guy that is very likely to be in the NBA the next 5 years, at the very least as a role player, like that he has shown enough of a high floor that he's, no matter what he turns into, he's going to be a good basketball player on a good rotate, like he can help a rotation win basketball games. There's plenty of guys to go with. Like you can pick saver prospects in this draft. But when it comes to just some of that high level, I think for Wolf, it's the quick processing feel. It's the grab and go playmaking handle, the pick and roll execution, the shooting that, let's say, at least flashes, but has shot enough to think it's real shooting. Some touch indicators better than others. Some are bad to admit, but if I'm looking for a potential offensive engine at the top of the draft, I think he fits the bill. His potential upside there just about as much as anybody else. And you can make, if another team makes the case for a Derek Queen for the same exact reasons, no problem with it. That's how that team looks at the prospect. That's what they see. That might be what they need given their other talent around it. So each team is different. Each team prioritizes different things in the draft. And that's why when we do a consensus big board, I think that's why tiers are so important, to help show, like, yeah, in general, I think he has the highest upside, but maybe there's other guys with a likelier high-end outcome that isn't quite as impressive superstar potential wise, but is still likely to happen. They're still likely to be a starter for a long time because of X, Y, and Z. And maybe that's just the guy that some GMs and front offices want to load up on, because not everyone is star hunting in the draft, even though that is kind of how we think about it. And, I think for, say, a team that is in the middle of nowhere relative to the NBA, like they don't have a star, they don't attract stars in free agency, they don't have the capital to trade for a star or a guy that could be a star, that literally leaves only the draft as your only way to actually find players. That's part of why tanking is such a big epidemic, is because the Jazz aren't signing LeBron James in free agency. Like they're just not. The Magic probably aren't, but Disney World has its perks. Maybe Bronny and him come
No state
around,
income tax. Maybe he wants to come back to Florida. Who knows?
Hey, there it is. The perks. There's a few of them. So it's just tough to find a star outside of if you're not using the draft as a smaller market team. And this is the guy to me that kind of his field is above the rest. That's where I would go with it. But there's obvious concerns that you have to be realistic about, what you're getting and what the investment is. And I think it comes down to the team knowing what they want and what they're willing to invest in and put resources behind to really help maximize that development for these players, instead of just drafting a guy because you think he's more talented and then not using him the way he's supposed to be used, and then labeling him a bust and throwing him to the side for the next pick as if he wasn't the same player he's always been, and you just used like a point guard as like a defensive stopper, 3-point shooter, off ball guy or something. Like, if you don't give him the right role to succeed, it's just not going to happen. There's only one LeBron. There's another 200 guys that need the right role to find that success. So it's always interesting thinking about the draft and kind of the pros and cons of why certain teams might want to take that swing. So the draft is all fun. Before we head off to the NBA and segue real quick, Yaxel Lendeborg, want to give him a shout. He's a big transfer portal prospect that might end up at Michigan here. What do you think about him? Committing and as a draft prospect as well. I know I have him about 40th, give or take, if he does stay in the draft, which it sounds like he will, because of his energy more than anything. He's just a clear rim runner that brings the energy and plays hard. Any team would want that type of energy guy, protecting the rim and running the floor.
I'm intrigued by him for sure. I hope that he does not go to the NBA. I hope that he decides that he needs to prove himself on a little bigger college stage. But I mean, the guy took on a really big role for UAB this year, and he was incredibly productive, and he was really efficient while he was doing it too. I mean, anytime that you see a mid-major guy that's getting over a 10 BPM and is just really filling the box score like that, and then you watch him play and he's an exciting player, he's a good athlete. It's like, I just want to see him in maize and blue, man. Come on, don't do this to me. But I think if I were drafting, from what I've seen of him, I think I would probably not let him get out of the late first. I just think I've seen enough there that I think I can get something out of him. And if it's a relatively low risk but high control contract, if you're getting him in the 25 to 30 range, like, I think you can get something there. I think even if he's just like a bench scorer with a little secondary creation, I like the passing feel I've seen from him. Like, I think there's potentially something there. And even if you get a role player out of it, I think he could be a valuable player.
Yeah, no doubt. It reminds me, maybe not him exactly, but the Magic drafted had a center situation a few years ago where they have Nikola Vucevic in place. They draft Mo Bamba, so they have the now and the future, and then also they go and sign Kem Birch, and then it turns out Birch
Love Kem Birch.
Shout out Kem Birch,
League legend Kem Birch.
I guess what I'm getting at here is Kem Birch just played with so much energy. Like, every game lived and died. Like, he had to be out there. Every possession mattered. Like, it just, that energy is palpable, noticeable from a big man, and possibly in stark contrast to some of those other bigs I just named, and why Birch became the de facto bench reliable big man option for that team, because you knew what you were getting with him. You knew it's high energy every day, and he's going to rim roll hard and protect the rim hard. If you do those basics as a big man, like, you have a bright future in the league. You just got to show up and do it. But a lot of guys are not willing to sacrifice their body for good reason. With all this money on the line, they want to preserve their health as well, and they're just not as willing to put in that dirty work. A lot of guys would rather be the 4 and not deal with all the rebounding and shoulder blows and headaches that come with being the 5. So you find a guy that's tough, that's willing to do it. I think that it is worth a pick, because that's clearly a rotation level player that can help any team. So like you said, low risk helps every team. That's worthy of a draft pick, no matter at some point, for sure, in the draft, no matter what. But so we'll see if he ends up back in Michigan, if he ends up in the draft. I think so far he's declared, and you mentioned he's leaning towards the draft, so we'll kind of see where that all plays out. And if he ends up back in college, then he's at one of the biggest D1 programs in the country, where he can really put his skill set on display, and maybe even move up higher in next year's draft. So, especially with the way NIL works, maybe it makes sense financially to stay one more year, and instead of being a second rounder, if that's kind of what he's hearing. So it all comes down to the rumors and what he's hearing to decide what's the best move for him. So shout out to Yaxel, one of the most underrated prospects in this class.
One of the great names too. I mean, like, I don't want to get too used to saying it, because it's every time I look at it, Yaxel Lendeborg, I want to hear E40 say it. It's the classic Pascal Siakam thing.
That's the test. He finally did it too. I don't know if you saw that video, but
I did see it.
He finally said,
absolutely worth the wait.
Years later. Thank you, random media person, for getting that out of him. But on the NBA, the draft, we might as well talk about the actual basketball happening here. The Central Division and the Detroit Pistons in the Central Division have just been on a tear. I mean, if you look at the East, it's just the Central Division, basically, plus some friends. Like, 4 of the top 6 seeds are in the Central. That's the Cavs, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Pistons. Cavs, obviously, the 1 seed. 4 through 6, all in the same division: Pacers, Bucks, Pistons. And, the Bulls are playing hard recently. They're not quite in that top 6, but they are technically in the play-in range. So they got 4 of the top 10 all in the same division, compared to the lowly Southeast division, where the Magic just won the division amongst other play-in teams who are all fighting to probably not be there. But the Magic pulled it out. They got the Magic sitting there with the second best defense and the division leader. I mean, they might have to hang that banner here as they enter the play-in, the play-in tournament. Well, hopefully they make it out of the play-in. But we're here to talk Pistons ball more so than the Magic today. So
I respect that the Magic are against putting the ball in the hoop. I think that's ethical basketball to me. Hopefully they get a little better offensively, but I mean, it's fun to watch.
No matter which side of the court, they are just against
no scoring.
Going
we're not doing that here. We don't do that.
We're here for rock fights only. So kind of like, the Pistons of old, just playing tough. So on Detroit, what's different this year that, we've heard of some of the things. Obviously there's like, coaching change. There's, to me, the big difference is putting veteran, reliable 3-point shooters around Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey's paint and spray creation helps unlock that floor balance a little bit, where you got the veterans like Tim Hardaway, Tobias, and obviously Malik Beasley playing like a 6th man of the year, lights out shooter. Like he's a perfect niche there. Like that's the big difference to me, is just kind of unlocking everything Cade can do offensively, but they're also a very tough defensive team off of Asar Thompson's ascension. Jalen Duren kind of coming into his own as both a defender and a little bit of a playmaking hub too. And Ivy, I thought, was really on his way up this year before getting hurt. Like I saw that live. It was terrible to see against the Magic, and you just want a quick recovery for him, full recovery, because he's
resuming basketball activity now.
Yeah, it was okay. There we go. He was supposed to be hopefully back by the playoffs, and he was just showing like he took another step that we all wanted to see from him. So shout out to him. But what would you say are the differences really that, maybe I hit on, maybe I didn't, that you noticed the most from this team compared to the last few seasons?
I think what's kind of funny about it is that, I mean, there's some obvious differences. They have a different philosophy in the front office. And they obviously, Monty Williams was a complete disaster, and they've replaced him with a culture building coach who has gotten complete buy-in from the team. I think that's a huge part of it, is the buy-in that they've gotten. Like, for all the talk of getting guys out there and letting them make mistakes in the years of, I think, honestly, wasted development time that they had, the idea was these guys are going to go take their lumps. And I think what you ultimately got was more bad habits than not. Like, I've seen some actual linear development from their young players this year. Like Duren, the first couple months of the season, I was like, they might have to trade him. Like, he's so bad defensively that I don't know that this is going to work. And since the start of the new year, he has been, honestly, I think more of a most improved candidate than Cade has been. He's been unbelievable. Oh, wow. Like, he is, to me, the second best player on the team right now. And so it's been really fun to watch. But I think it's a combination of just buy-in, overall professionalism. They went out and they got really good locker room veterans who can play. Like, for all of the hate that Tobias Harris got, and I understand why from Sixers fans, because once you get to the postseason, I've lived it with the Pistons before too. He doesn't quite play. He's an 82 game player. I don't know that he's a 7 or 16 game player. But he is a huge floor raiser for an NBA team, because he is a rock solid, experienced veteran. He knows where to be on the court. Their defense is much better with him out there. Like, for all of the sort of jokes that were made about, even at the time, I don't know that I was excited about that signing, but it's like, it's a 2-year deal. Who cares what they paid? There's no bad 2-year deals. That's been one of the best signings of the offseason. I think it'd be hard to debate that. Like, he has been really critical to what they do. And look, I was not happy about the Quentin Grimes trade. I was not happy about turning him into Tim Hardaway Jr. And Tim's a Michigan guy. Like, I have a sentimental attachment to him from that. He's not my favorite player, but he is, if he's the worst guy that you are rolling out in your starting lineup and one of your worst rotation players, your team's not going to be that bad, because at the very least, he's a guy that takes charges. He's a guy that can space the floor. He's a guy that can get hot. He can randomly get you a 30-point game every once in a while. I don't love that he's basically been put in the spot of a low usage 3-and-D wing, which he shouldn't be any of those things except maybe the 3 part. But even then, like, I think he's been a really stabilizing presence, and by all accounts, he's a great teammate. So I think guys like playing with him. They like having him around. And the third thing that I would say for the big improvement is they just don't have dead minutes the way that they did the last few years. There's no James Wiseman. There's no Marvin Bagley. There's no. I mean, let me take a look at some of the guys that were playing for them.
Oh man!
In the previous, I mean,
you sure you want to do that to yourself?
It's tough. I mean, and even guys like I like Tosan. I'm gonna butcher his name, but Tosan Ebuan. Like I like him. Malachi Flynn had a 50-point game for him, but
hey.
I mean, like I loved the Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala era for the Pistons last year, but like it's Kevin Knox, Isaiah Livers. Did you know Taj Gibson was on the Pistons? I've already forgotten that he was on the Pistons. Evan Fournier, Magic Legend, was there for a minute.
Oh.
Like there was no continuity, and when it came to some of the my biggest sort of criticism of Troy Weaver was always he was so intent on relitigating previous draft boards that he had. And so he would waste years on guys like Josh Jackson or Marvin Bagley, or Wiseman is the worst example of it, where it's like, just admit you were wrong. This is not going to work. And they would either they would burn draft picks to do it, or they would make trades where they could have gotten draft capital. And instead you get a guy that you either give a bad contract to and you got to get rid of some seconds to get rid of, or you walk away with nothing and you traded, not that Sadiq Bey is a world beater right now, but he was a guy that they liked and they traded him for essentially nothing except for some really negative minutes. And one of the most personally scarring trade deadlines I've ever had to be a part of. But it's just like the bad edges have been filed off, and I think that they've set a really nice baseline for where they want to go from here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like with the new foundation, and I'm glad you gave Tim Hardaway a shout too. I liked his role next to Luka for some similar reasons. Next to Cade, pretty much that 3-point shot, and kind of not asking him to do too much creation for the team, and just kind of let him focus on getting a bucket, hit the open threes when it comes to him, attack the closeout. Like that's a role where he seems to have really thrived in, maybe above expectations, both next to Luka and now next to Cade. I feel like that is just a clean match. And Malik Beasley, Tobias, same thing. It's funny, look, when you see the side by side with Tobias and Paul George of kind of this season for them. Like, I mean, the Pistons got the better player for this year. Like it is what it is. Like look at anything. Like that's just how it goes. And obviously he's been in a weird situation on that injury riddled team there in Philly. But it's just the grass isn't always greener, and especially like you said, the regular season wise. Like I think Tobias is funny because I feel like I guess he was still a little bit of an unknown when Orlando acquired him. He was kind of like the win of the trade back then, that of what he was like 10 years ago. But I feel like he was instantly 16 points a game for the rest of his career. Like he has just been good for that 16 to 18 points, put the ball in the basket, score himself consistently. And maybe it isn't the most conducive to winning in the postseason, kind of like you say, where it's not, there is some D&3, but it's a little slow. It's not the quickest processing. It's a little ISO-y more so than team is where it's been so far. I think is kind of where some of the drawbacks have been, but we'll see. I mean, he's got a good role here in Detroit, and I'm actually interested in what you think about these potential playoff matchups in the Central Division, because all four of these teams, we're going to put the Bulls on the side for a second here because they got to win the play-in to actually make the playoffs. But if they do win the play-in, then the entire division is in the playoffs, which is unreal to think about. But Cleveland, obviously, one of the top two teams in the league, second in point differential, first in offense, eighth in defense. They're the legit real contender as much as anybody. And then you have also Indiana, Milwaukee, and Detroit all hovering between 11th and 14th in point differential, meaning they're all above average teams this year by how badly they're beating opponents. And they all have their strengths and weaknesses. Indiana and Milwaukee are both top 10 offenses. Detroit is 10th in defense. All three are about middle in the pack on the opposite end. So what I was wondering is, if you're in the same division, you obviously play those teams more often than everybody else. You play them twice as much. So the first thing that comes to mind is, are there any advantages that you've noticed where the Pistons match up pretty well with one of these other teams based on even if it's just this season because of all the changes they went through? Like maybe they had, I don't have the splits in front of me, but maybe they had the Pacers number, and that's a nice matchup where you're excited to see two kind of rising guards between Halliburton and Cade Cunningham on the big stage, getting that experience against each other. So, have you noticed any advantages for the Pistons, or even between any of those teams, where maybe the Cavs are the best team, but seems like the Bucks have really had their number this year, or whatever it might be? Have you noticed any mismatches or advantages for any of these teams, whether it's the Pistons or a different matchup?
As far as it stands for the Pistons, they've dominated the Bulls. I don't think that's going to have any effect on what happens in the playoffs. I don't foresee them running into each other there, as interesting as that would be. More the circumstances to create it than the actual series. But I would say I'm a little bit bummed out. Like, I'm excited about a Pistons-Knicks series. We're locked into that now. I think that is like a fun matchup, and they've had some really fun games already so far. But I think we had the potential to get one of the best playoff series primarily aired on NBA TV of all time, because the Pistons and the Pacers hate each other. They do not like each other at all. Tyrese Halliburton was getting into shouting matches with I want to say it was Malik Beasley's dad or something like that. Like there's beef between family members and players. No, it might have been Tim Hardaway that he was getting into beef with, like Tim Hardaway Sr. And which I don't know that you want to fight him, but
that's a choice.
Yeah, but those games got chippy, and it would have been a really interesting series, because I think Indiana's a little better in a playoff context, and I think that they had a slight edge in the regular season over the Pistons. But I think it would have been like a fun 6, maybe 7 game series, and we're not going to get that. The Bucks have kind of owned the Pistons this year, and that basically is how they locked into the 5 seed, was by Giannis coming up and hitting the Beasley shimmy on him after blocking him the other night. Like, they just have had our number for whatever reason. And then honestly, the Pistons have been very competitive with the Cavs when they've played them. They beat them without Cade in the lineup. And they had the one game where I think it was Garland hit like a full court shot basically to beat them, or it was a half court shot. Like they've hung in there every time. So if circumstances somehow make it where, I mean, this is absolute best case scenario for me, they meet in the conference finals or something like that, I think Cleveland would win, but I think Detroit would take a game or two. As far as other teams that I've seen, it does kind of seem like the Pacers have a little bit of an edge over the Bucks. Like, I would definitely pick them in that series, I think. But I mean, with Giannis, you never know. Like, he could just go win a playoff series. So, but I could be wrong. That's anecdotal, but from what I've seen between those two teams, it definitely seems like the Pacers have gotten the better of them in that matchup. And I think the Cavs have largely beaten up everybody. I mean, I don't think there's much.
Yeah.
And the Bulls are, I mean, they've been better of late, but they were late risers to get back into, play in purgatory where they maybe are going to be forever. So I don't know. I don't know that I want to sort of bet on Josh Giddey in the long term. But he's surpassed my expectations for what he was going to do this season. And, they got their pick back, and I like the Trey Jones edition for them too. I think he's been kind of fun to watch. So I think that's as much as anybody really needs to talk about the Bulls at this point. But we'll see. Maybe they sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, they're hot as of late. Like the Magic too. They both were kind of like on a downward trajectory about a month ago, and now they're the fun storylines of the last month, or at least some of them. And you hit on plenty of concerns for the Bulls, like putting up a lot of stats this time of year, post trade deadline games. It can be tricky because those are generally the games missed by the most players, so the competition might not be as high level as you might expect. So the numbers might just be a little inflated there, but that's where the evaluation comes in. Definitely some concerns with, maxing a player like Giddy, giving some of the shooting and defense that we've seen can be problematic. And that comes back to kind of that general rule where, like, if you're not a consistent shooter and defender, it's just hard to build around you as a guy in this league unless you're really special at other things. And to his credit, one of the best passers around in the league, like him and Lonzo especially, can be a fun passing pairing. So definitely a lot of talent. Like I like some of the moves the Bulls made. I think Bulls fans would say they wish they went even more all in on that kind of trajectory of moving on from their stars, and probably they probably would have preferred cut ties with Vooch and Kobe White at this point too, and just get all you can and go choose a direction rather than just kind of fight for that play-in. It feels like you're stuck on that treadmill to mediocrity, as we say as a fan, for a while. When most fans want to see their team compete for a championship, but some fans just want to come home to a competitive game at the end of the day and aren't as invested as all the hardcore fans. So there is a little bit of a pull there where I think there are teams that are pretty happy with, are we playing competitive basketball? Is it an entertaining product? Like, we don't have to win it all. We just have to be a good team that isn't like people actually want to go see on a Thursday night or whatever it is for a fun night out. So it's interesting how those dynamics go back and forth, because obviously, like, the hardcore fans just want a direction. They either want you to be bad and get some high potential picks so you can rebuild on the fly and then be good eventually long term. Everyone wants a long term contender, and so it's really hard to just kind of jump there from the middle and not kind of have the superstar in place already anyway. So, we extended the Bulls talk probably longer than we should have, but we're still here. So
hey, I'm just look. One of the best things that can happen when you're in like a bad or mediocre spot is, like, at least somebody's talking about you. We're not just ignoring the Bulls. The Bulls are there. We recognize it.
Yeah,
Mickey Mouse March legend Josh Giddey is out there. Kobe White is playing well. They've got some guys.
Kobe is playing well. He's fun. And Matos, you got to give Matos a Buzelis.
I was not a big Buzelis.
He's moving.
He's not a guy I wanted the Pistons to draft. He's been great. He's really fun to watch.
Yeah, high energy out there. A lot of fun. I mean, the Bulls are fun. Pat on the back. Bulls are fun. Hopefully, it looks like they will be in this play-in. So you never know. That's the exciting part of the play-in is win or go home. They only got to win 2 games and they're in the playoffs. And all it takes is, God forbid an injury, but like one or 2 bad slip ups for a team ahead of them, and boom, they got a playoff series, and they're a fun story that's maybe they convince themselves they're on the way up. So either way, it'll be exciting to see kind of how that plays out for them. And back to the other teams as well in the Central Division. Yeah, I mean, the Pistons Pacers would have been all-time NBA TV. I mean, that would have been a fun one because they both just are fun styles of plays to enjoy. It just as a basketball fan to watch. First of all, like, they're both exciting offenses and they play hard. So that would have been a fun
transition.
Shootout.
You would have seen some playoff transition basketball, which you don't always see.
That's very true. And it's interesting how that matchup with the Bucks looks, because I think Damian Lillard is declared out for the first round series. I'm not sure if that's official, but pretty sure they're not expecting him. So, how much can Giannis put on his back this time around, and will he stay healthy? Those are the big things. But he is obviously top 3 player in this league that can get it done on his own against just about any team. So we'll see. That's one they could pull out, but is definitely a TBD on how it all looks and kind of how Giannis can hold his own as the only guy basically going against full-blown playoff teams that are fully healthy. But that'll be exciting to see nonetheless, like if that clash of styles, kind of how it plays out. And that kind of leads me to another similar conversation with Coach of the Year. I thought we could end the pod here on a couple fun award races. With Coach of the Year, obviously the Cavs have the favorite at the moment with Kenny Atkinson. He's the odds-on favorite to win, and I think giving it to you can make the Coach of the Year award about pretty much whatever you want. Like, if you think it goes to the most accomplished team that season, like their coach deserves it. I mean, there's credit there. The Cavs and Thunder are both running laps around the rest of the league. I mean, when they start the year like 30-1 or whatever it is, it's like, yeah, the coach is probably doing something right. We can go ahead and give some flowers to that coach right now. And for me, I do think it generally is an award that goes to, as you coined before the pod, the most improved team, basically, like the team that wins the most above expectations. Where, I think the Pistons make a great case this year, where I don't think anyone saw this level of success coming this quickly. A lot of I thought they'd be better, not even because of the coaching necessarily, but just because of the talent. Like, as I mentioned before, just kind of mixing in reliable veterans who know where to be on the day off and know where to be on the court to spread the floor for three around Cade. Because I was that big of a believer in Cade that all he really needed was an NBA offense to go run it. And the Pistons finally surrounded him with one. So that's an interesting one where who do you credit for that success? Is it the coach putting it all together? Is it the GM finding that talent and bringing them? Maybe it's Cade himself just taking a leap. Maybe it's the other prospects on the team taking a leap. So Pistons have a great case. I personally, I think I would lean with Ty Lue and the Clippers this year is kind of where my head's at, because this team was just such an unknown all year. Kawhi is always in and out of the lineup, and yet they lost Paul George in the summer, and yet they almost look like they haven't missed a beat. If anything, they look like they've gotten better. And then you go and I know the stats have kind of changed a lot due to small sample size. For a minute there, they were very high defensively. They still are. They're third on defense and 17th on offense, eighth overall point differential. Ivica Zubac, did not say that name. I can never get his name right. Zubats.
Avisa, I believe. Zubats,
Avisa
but yeah.
Zubats. It's none of the letters you think it is off first glance.
You got to forget what letters you know and how they're pronounced.
You bring in a Pokemon here that hasn't evolved yet with Zubat, and you put the name together, and it works. But trying to show mad respect for him because he has been a defensive anchor for this team. I actually got to ask Ty Lue about him, and he made the case he should be an all defensive player this year because of what he's been able to do, both as a defensive anchor, both in versatile schemes that he's been able to roll Zubats out in. And then also, not that it has to do with defense, but he's also been a scoring option. He's also been a hub for them down low out of the post. So Zubats has really had an underrated season in terms of he's not getting credit as a defensive player of the year type. Maybe he won't win the award, but we should at least give him a shout.
He's definitely got a third team all NBA case as far as I'm concerned too. He's been really good.
There it is. I mean, that's how good he's been, and I think he will make an all defensive second team. I think is at the very least where he ends up award wise. But hey, I mean, why not have a most improved case for him as well? I mean, he should be on the list. He's actually, now that I mentioned it, he is tied for third in most improved odds on Bet MGM site. So, he's got a chance. Obviously, he is being talked about there. But what I would mostly be getting at with Ty Lue and him is that most people didn't see this coming. They're 49-32. They have the 8th best point differential in the entire league. They're one of the best teams in the West. They're one of the only playoff teams in the West that didn't fire their coach less than 2 weeks ago. So they got something going for them at the moment as the playoffs come around. And their stars are healthy. And Norm Powell has shown was a borderline all-star. That it's almost like they knew we're going to let Paul George walk for nothing. Norm Powell is going to replace 80% of that production, obviously. We don't even have to worry about it. And they've just been rolling ever since. So at this moment, I think I would go with Ty Lue as my coach, or my vote for coach of the year if I were to have a vote, because they are a legitimate contender who have overcome injuries to their best players all season. They have unlocked this cornerstone in Zubats as a defensive anchor that's very worthy of many awards in his own right that I wouldn't say many people saw coming before the season either. And they're a team that no team wants to see in the playoffs when you're facing an elite defense with James Harden running the offense, Kawhi Leonard hitting tough shots, Norm Powell ready to score, Zubats ready to create. I mean, that's just a tough out for anybody. So given the expectations, given the lack of the revolving door of talent that he's had to deal with, and just given how he has a top 3 offense with the top 10 team by point differential, I don't think a ton of people saw coming. So that's how I end up with Ty Lue for coach of the year. And then, the Thunder coach, the Rockets coach, the Lakers coach, all these guys are in the running as well, and have a pretty good case. And was wondering where you've kind of ended up on your list of who you think deserves the award.
I am really glad that you brought up Ty Lue, because I do think the Clippers have been kind of like a forgotten team, even though they're about to possibly win 50 games this year, which I don't think anyone expected. Norm Powell's he's averaging a career high in points, and he's about to turn 32. Like, I don't know that anybody saw him scoring like 22 a game this year. Like, they've had multiple guys take leaps that I don't think anyone would have predicted. Zubats being a great example of that. But I think I fall on the Atkinson side. I think it's really like Coach of the Year is one that I don't get mad about who people want to pick for it, because I think people have different philosophies about it. And I think that there's never, there's always 3 or 4 guys that don't even get mentioned that are great coaches who are doing a good job. So I think I fall on the Atkinson side just because I think it's really, really hard. Like, JB's been amazing. The Pistons tripled their win total, which I don't think has ever happened before. He's got an amazing case to be made for that. But I think it's really hard to go from spinning your wheels to that next, pushing 70 wins thing. You just do not see teams do that very often. So I think that's ultimately where I fall. I'm glad that Kenny got another shot. I think it was long overdue. I never agreed with the Nets firing him. It didn't really seem like it was ever really about him. So it's nice that he's got what's been a really fantastic second act so far.
I mean, he feels like a perennial interim coach. Like, he is the guy that every team, Kenny, that every team wants on their bench when push comes to shove and they don't know who to hire. Like, he is the guy that's left over that leads the pack, because he's just been a good coach at every stop he has. And it's a great point in Brooklyn. I mean, they were so star-crossed with all the different talent coming through there that, that things change fast, and you think you're the big show, so you let go of some of the talent you have, and now Kenny Atkinson and Jared Allen are on the best team in the East, stone's throw away, and Brooklyn is not exactly anywhere near that anymore. So, it's funny how it works out, and I'm happy for Kenny as well, like getting to do it with Jared Allen as well. They were both together on the Nets beforehand, and just maintaining that success. And, really expanding on the experience we've seen the last few years from this Cavs team, where like not everything happens overnight. And this team was kind of thrown together with some of the big trades for Donovan Mitchell not too long ago, but now it's a couple years now. Maybe people expect perfection right away, and it doesn't come. And you have to like actually build a team out of what you have. And they have, this could have gone wrong a few different ways. Like, you have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, 2 electric guards, who that doesn't always work out, where maybe Darius willingly takes a little bit of an on the ball backseat to Donovan Mitchell at this point. That doesn't always happen with egos and the paycheck, the money involved. Like, people want theirs. They want to make sure they get their numbers and their production and get to show off everything they can do. So it's rare to find that level of commitment from the talent. And then what really stands out this year, and where I think Kenny really should get the credit, is unlocking Evan Mobley as a downhill playmaking hub, where they decided, instead of trying to like force all these actions through Garland and Donovan Mitchell creating everything for us from the perimeter, even if it is with the screen and even if it is a good look, what if we could get the ball moving out from Evan Mobley to find these incredible shooters and build something of a spacing hub around his playmaking? Where I actually asked him about that after or before a Magic game, and he said the biggest thing was really just giving him the ball and kind of breathing confidence into Evan Mobley. And just like, what unlocked him the most was just simply having the keys to run the offense, and that the coaches would be there, see him flash some crazy pull-up shot, and it's like, oh, he can do that too. Like, it's like they were surprised at everything he could do, as not right away, but over the years of seeing him play. So like, giving him that confidence, giving him the keys to run the offense, and kind of building it out from him, almost in the way that you might not exactly like the way the Warriors run with Draymond, but in the idea that there's a point forward hub there looking for the shooters and the scorers around him. that's just it's a nice balance to the offense where you can play through Evan Mobley's playmaking. You have elite scorers and shooters now having the advantages already created for them in some cases, allowing them to attack closeouts with a little bit extra advantage. And the result has just been a pristine offense where it's 5 out and everyone seems open all the time. Ty Jerome has not like come down from his true shooting percentage of breaking the stat altogether. Like
well, now DeAndre Hunter's in the mix too. It's like you can just slot somebody in there and they're their best self. They're getting their best selves out of everybody.
Exactly. I mean, that's what made the trade so interesting is they were on a roll and they made a midseason trade to try to upgrade their rotation to really solidify that top 9. And like you said, like they could just throw Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter off the bench now where they're starting level players against opposing bench players. And they're in this system where the looks are just more open than normal. And they're a lot more open than they look in Orlando or anywhere that doesn't have like this pristine offensive machine spacing. Like it like I don't want to compare it to the Warriors, but it just feels like you're watching a team that clicks. Like the offense, everyone knows where to be, knows how to maximize it. There is no doubt. It's almost as much of like the old school Spurs with the Boris Diaw teams where it's just the ball is moving, it's finding the open man, everyone on the floor can shoot and make a good decision with the ball. It's not Jared Allen obviously, but it's like close to at least 4 out around one big man, and Mobley can do a little bit of everything. So he definitely deserves a big credit for unlocking all of that offense this year, where it is also the accumulation of kind of gaining all that experience the last few years, knocking on the door against the Knicks the first year. They kind of get embarrassed at Madison Square Garden in the playoffs. Then they have a little more success. They beat the Magic in 7 games this next year and are a lot more competitive in the playoffs. And now it looks like they're the team to beat. And all that's standing in front of them from the finals is taking down the defending champs. But they seem to be just grooving a little bit better than the Celtics this year. And I should pump the brakes a little bit. The Boston's only four wins back. Only one spot back. The third, they're both top 3-point differential. They're both top 3 offense. They're both top 8 defense. So they're obviously both still very talented teams, but Cleveland has earned that respect for this season. And, Kenny's a huge reason why. So totally deserving of that Coach of the Year spot. Did you want to give a shout out to any other coaches here before we might hop over to Most Improved?
Looking at the landscape of it, I would say, Houston, I think, obviously Ime has done a really good job there. I think.
Yeah, that was the other team that I think at least deserves a shout here, given the expectations.
Yeah, he seems like a guy that is hesitant to slot young guys into bigger roles, but the fact that he was willing to go further in on Amen obviously has been huge for them, and having a bigger role for Tari Eason I think has been really huge for them too. So, but they're just better across the board. They've gotten better at everything. So, they're about to be the number 2 seed in the West. So it's really been they're an impressive, tough team, and I'm really interested to see what they look like in the postseason.
Yeah, that's another one where, kind of like Detroit, I was a little jealous of just the depth of veteran shooters they brought in. I don't think Jeff Green's there anymore, but Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, bringing in guys that know how to play, winning experience at the playoff level, and can bring that D&3 role player veteranness that you just kind of want in some role players. I think that helped kind of build out their lineup a little bit to the point where they almost have too much depth of good players, and it's hard for everyone to see the court, where a guy like Reed Shepherd will pop off for like 20 points, and he hardly even plays for this team, if at all. And it's because there's so much talent on the team. So that'll probably be the next big move that maybe elevates them to a more respected contender, I guess, is kind of that consolidation trade, I should say, where they, package a few of these guys for another star. There were rumors of Devin Booker for like Jalen Green or something back earlier this year. I don't know how true those were, but, putting the rumors aside, like Udoka has helped change the culture there. Top 4 defense, 12th ranked offense. Those are traits of a contender. And there's a lot of young talent. And, I'm glad you shouted out Amen and Tari, because I agree that I think those are their 2 high impact defenders that really are the cornerstones of that defense. on top of having plus defenders at just about every position. I think they both go into it, but it's really hard to do one without those lockdown marquee impact guys like those two. So that energy, and as you say, giving them the opportunity when there's a lot of talent on the floor that has a case, especially higher draft picks that might be more invested in from above, but you see more impact from these other guys. Like you got to play your best players if you're trying to win basketball games. So shout out to him. I think he definitely deserves a look here. And, Mark, I'm going to butcher his name too. Thunder coach Mark Dugnott and JJ Redick with the Lakers. Like they're all playing great for similar reasons as the Cavs. Like Mark deserves a shout with the Thunder, and the Thunder are unreal. Like he has to be in this conversation.
It's crazy that he's an afterthought. They have the best point differential of all time right now?
They're just, it's hard because they're the best at everything. A lot of us, I wouldn't say expected the best at everything, but we expected the number one defense that signed Caruso and Hartenstein to get even better. And I don't know how much higher you can get than number one, but they are defending teams. Is that right? 5 points per possession? No, sorry. So they are 2 points per possession better on defense than any other team in the league. And offensively, they're 2 points. They're tied for second as well. So their point differential overall plus 13.6, as you say, one of the best in the history of the league. 67 wins already, and it's hard to point to any one credit, and that it'll be really interesting how the awards shake out because you got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in the MVP conversation. It's either him or Jokic. He's also in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, but so is Lou Dort, so is Jalen Williams. So they might split some votes there, even though they have the best defense of the league. So they might you could literally make an all defensive ballot out of their roster, and they could stack up with the rest of the league combined, in my eyes, based on the personnel they have. So it's hard to just divvy up one for the Defensive Player of the Year award. So that might be one where they split votes. Like we said, there's a lot of coaches this year where you can always kind of make a case for 5 or 6 different guys, but he's definitely in there. So it'll be interesting to see how many awards actually recognize this historic season where they should, because of the winning, get a lot of awards that come with it. But it's to be determined, where it's kind of a close call for a lot of these. And that leads me to one last race with the Most Improved Player award race, where your guy Cade Cunningham is one of the favorites. He's taken that superstar leap, and we've seen over the recent years that this award hasn't gone to the middle of the pack guy that came out of nowhere, that had nothing going for him in one stop, and then shows he's actually an NBA player in another stop, or that unexpected improvement is not rewarded as much with this award, as much as the top picks that got slightly better in the approximate year they probably should. And it's kind of become the award for the pop out player of the year too, where if there's just a big star that's made a name for themselves this year, and we can't give them MVP, but we could give them MIP, that kind of the fun player of the year award is kind of where it's gone to as well. So if not for Cade, there is one other person who is the favorite, and I'll let you talk about him. Dyson Daniels is the favorite for the award right now. I think he would be my pick based on all the stats, but what as a Pistons guy, why would you think it should maybe be Dyson or Cade or vice versa?
So I think this is an award where there are obviously differing philosophies on it. The guy I always think of when it comes to MIP, and this is a while ago now, is Bobby Simmons won it back in 2005.
Okay.
As just a randomly shot up, had a great shooting season, scored 16 points a game. That's who I'm thinking of with this. So if you're in all NBA consideration, I just don't think it's interesting to have you win this award. At that point, I would almost rather get rid of the award than have it. Maybe you have a breakout player award or something. Create an award that encompasses this. I want to celebrate guys that either later in their career or, not on the timetable that people expected, turned into something that people didn't anticipate. Because Dyson has been, he was a throw-in, maybe not a throw-in, but he was not considered a huge asset when getting traded to Atlanta. He was part of a package, and he's turned into a deflections monster for them. Like the Pistons have had some competitive games with the Hawks this season, and that guy is just everywhere. It's like he's teleporting around the court, just getting to every loose ball, getting into the passing lanes, harassing your best players. Like he's been incredible to watch. And he was a much more proto version of this in New Orleans. They just were not, you could see the pieces of it, but it was nowhere near this fully realized. And I think that he kind of is emblematic of what I want the award to be. And then even for guys that are maybe on a little level above that, I know Kyle Anderson the other day was touting Tyler Hero for this, and as someone who's been kind of a hater for Tyler Hero for a long time, he has taken a huge step forward this year, and I don't know that it's one that anybody anticipated. So Cade is on a timetable that makes sense to me. It's the unexpected that I want to see with this award.
Exactly. I mean, he just sums up the award so well, and he's the kind of guy you want to see kind of win that award, the guy that no one sees coming, that suddenly is an impactful player in the NBA. And beyond just going from nothing to a solid role player, he's arguably the defensive player of the year after basically being a bench player who didn't play at all the year before. And they had depth of talent, and it was hard to get him minutes and all that. But he's, to put in perspective, the one stat that, I mean, obviously the deflections and the steals are the main one. If you put up his numbers against anyone, it's insane. And to put it into perspective slightly is back when Wembanyama was still healthy, he led all players in blocks by 70. He had 170 blocks, and the next closest was about 100 or just under 100. Dyson Daniels has over 100 more steals than the second closest player. So he is more he's produced more steals than second place than Wembanyama did blocks for second place. Just to put that in perspective, because we knew how historic Wembanyama was as a shot blocker. Dyson is doing that as a stealer, a ball stealer. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is actually 98 steals behind him, so not quite 100, but the point is still the same, that he's literally has 230 steals on the season, basically a third more than the next closest. The amount of forced turnovers he has and the deflections as well is just uncanny. So I think he has a real defensive player of the year award case, let alone most improved. He's got to make an all defensive team because of those stats. There's no way to leave him off. And the only reason he's not going to win defensive player of the year is the Hawks defense as a team is just not simply rated that high. So when you're not winning games, when you don't have the defensive rating as a team, it's hard to make that counter argument when a lot of people are just going to take the best defense and take the best defender and hand it to them. And that vote might be split a little bit because it comes back to the Thunder, where people all view the Thunder as the best defensive team, but then the nitty gritty, pretty much everyone seems to see a different player as the best defender on that team. I credit Lou Dort because I think of him as the face of that defense and have for years. I think he gets the toughest matchup, point of attack, while everyone else kind of handles the offense, and he's been doing it nitty gritty. But I also don't want to favor too many prior years into that decision. It's just how I view his role with this team for as long as he's been there. So that's where I lean with it. But all it takes is one other mind to say J Will or J Dub, and then neither of them get it because they split the votes, and then neither gets recognized with it. So it's interesting how it'll all play out with the Thunder. And to hit on those deflections as well, Dyson Daniels also leads the league in deflections, and it's not even close. He has 443. Second place, Keon Ellis has 267. So we're talking 180 more deflections, almost twice, almost 200 more deflections in the next closest. That's insane. Right? That means he has gotten his hand on a ball 443 times when he wasn't supposed to. And that's just how, no one can keep him away. And that active defense, that versatility to play different guard positions, to guard 1 through 3 at the very least. And just people almost underrate the ability to force turnovers. It is the ultimate view of defense. That's what you're trying to do, is force a stop or force a turnover. And the turnover breaks into a transition opportunity for your offense. So it's really the best possible outcome of any play is a stop and an easy scoring opportunity all in one swing. And that's how valuable deflections and steals can be. So, Dyson got to be obviously all defensive candidate. I have him top 5 for the award itself. And then, defensive award. And then for most improved, like, I don't know where else you can go, but, we have said before that Cade Cunningham could be a favorite for this award because of the clear improvements he's made to the rest of the league. Even if a lot of us think he probably could have been doing this the whole time if he had the right spacing around him, and this could even be on his expected development cycle. But like you said, like, just have a different award if that's kind of what we're rewarding here, and don't make it most improved when there's guys that are barely on the fringes of the league and then have to earn their role and have to improve to do it and earn that kind of stuff. And it's just probably more impressive, I guess, from the improvement wise, to be able to do it at the NBA level, to go from a guy that doesn't play to one of the best players in the league, or at least one of the best defenders in the league, almost overnight. And all it took was opportunity as much as anything. And that is another part of this where it's, how much does opportunity and a player's role and situation kind of get baked into these awards? Where was Dyson this player last year? He just was riding the bench, and now he's just being used in the right role, and now he's thriving. It could be a combination of those factors. So it is interesting where it all gets added up. But I'm with you that it should be, the role player that breaks out, or the unexpected player that breaks out, more than kind of like the natural progression of a top pick that everyone kind of expects to happen. Like, that should just be its own award. Like, I like that idea a little bit more if we're going to break it up that way. So super interesting discussion.
It feels
there.
more like a celebration of the league,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, look, I don't know for sure that this would mean anything for Cade, but I feel like it means more for a guy like Dyson to get that award than it does for someone like Cade.
Yeah, like Cade's about to be All-NBA first team, probably. I would imagine that means a heck of a lot more, and most improved is just kind of a nice touch around it.
Just throw it in the trophy case with everything else, whatever.
Yeah, it's just in there. It's funny, I think of Hedo Turkoglu with the award only because it was kind of the honorary. It was the only award they had left to give him, basically, because he didn't make an all-star team. In my eyes, the Magic in 2009 he was the second most important player to that team to me. And 3 other players, Dwight Howard, Rashard, and Jameer, got the all-star nods. So Hedo was left out. And it was like, to me, he was the whole engine of the offense. Like, obviously Dwight, high-level impact, he's the superstar. But that offensive engine type, the creator that ran the whole thing, that was Hedo running pick and roll to me. So that's why I was like, at least he got a most improved out of it, because when you go back at the record books, you just see all the awards, you see the year, and you just see a handful of names. And kind of to this point is it's nice to credit the guys that aren't getting credit elsewhere with something. And, Dyson probably isn't going to get that Defensive Player of the Year award because of the rating. He might make an all defensive team, but there's a lot of talented defenders that he probably will, given the stats, but like it's a little more up in the air. MIP should be his recognition for this year, given the drastic, stark differences from year to year. And, Zubats is in that conversation. He is third on that list. Evan Mobley, I saw, also has pretty high odds there. He has also taken a leap, like we mentioned, through Kenny. So, a lot of these awards also come down to who you credit for the success of these teams. And some people credit the coaches, some credit the development of the players, some credit the management of the front office putting all the pieces together. And obviously all of them flow together, and the award should be about recognizing the teams that did it best and the players that did it best. So I think we found some good ones today. We got MIP unlocked. We got Coach of the Year. Excited to see how these Pistons look in the playoffs, and the future of prospects like Danny Wolf, Ace Bailey. Going to be exciting to see where they end up and how the teams kind of invest in them going forward. But it was just a lot of fun talking hoops today, man. Thanks for taking the time today, Thom.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It has been an absolute pleasure.
You already know. Well, that's learning basketball. I think that's a good 2 hours. I think we hit our mark. We did the thing today, talking ball. But thanks for taking the time, man.
Yep. Well, peace.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.